Remember when the TSA lost its bargaining rights? I do, because it happened shortly into the Trump administration. While it might feel like this administration has been in power for 6 years, we're barely 6 months in. And now, like many of this administration's executive orders, the TSA decision is being challenged in court. Today, we're going to unpack that and more on today's episode. I'm Rivera Jr., and you're watching Rights Watch. Since day one of this administration has launched attack after attack on the civil service. One of its early targets, the TSA, stripped entirely of its collective bargaining rights. Unions across the workforce, especially those like AFGE, who aren't afraid to speak out, has faced a coordinated and strategic campaign to weaken their power. Now, if you're not familiar with CBAs or collective bargaining agreements, here's a simple version. A CBA is a contract between an agency and a union that lays out the rules, benefits, and protections that employees are entitled to. That includes everything from sick leave to disciplinary procedures, safety issues, and more. Unions use CBAs to fight for safe working environments, fair treatment, and to grieve without injustices. Without it, federal workers are surely vulnerable. And to talk more about this today, I'm joined by someone who knows this landscape better than most, federal employee rights attorney, Andrew Weeks. Hey, Andrew, thanks for joining me today.
Danny, good to be back with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's always good to have you here, brother. So, as we know, back in March, Secretary Christie Noem unilaterally stripped the TSA of its collective bargaining rights. She claimed that union representation created delays in responding to security threats and went as far as calling AFGE a misuse of workers' dues. Now, most people, and for our union dues, they mostly cover things like legal defense, representation, training. So when an official like this questions the value of union dues, she's essentially saying that representation for federal workers isn't worth the cost. Andrew, what was your initial reactions to this order, and what kind of precedent do you think it sets for the rest of the federal workforce if this is allowed to stand?
Yes, this is a scary precedent, but we have to backtrack and say, TSA, it's a different animal with its bargaining rights than, say, the VA or some of the other agencies with bargaining rights. So the TSA, it's not, and this all goes back to actually 9/11, where the TSA is not under the Title V bargaining rights per se, to the point where they aren't even able to appeal to the FLRA. So it is a different animal, but and that's my initial reaction. Terrible decision, I think. I think this is awful. It's really funny because I fly a lot. I have offices in Kentucky and DC, and I'm back and forth a lot. And TSA needs employees to work for them. They need this. And what the unions did, why President Obama and President Biden strengthened these union protections for TSA is because it actually helps retain good employees. It helps TSA operate better. It helps you get through that line more quickly. It helps keep you safer from what could be coming through there. This is it's wild because actually the AFGE's representation of TSA has done nothing but make it better. So that's my initial reaction. Is I am a little floored by it, though.
You're absolutely right to be so. I think it's worth reminding, and you're right on the dot, Andrew, reminding people that the TSA wasn't always unionized. They were granted collective bargaining rights under the Obama administration after years of high turnover, low morale, and workplace concerns. Unions don't usually come and calm and happy work environments. They're usually formed because something's typically wrong, whether it's unsafe conditions, discrimination, bad leadership. And in the TSA, this is a high risk setting, like where one wrong policy could literally put lives in danger, not just for TSA agents, but the people who are flying. One of the arguments that AFG is raising is that stripping these rights is a violation of the First Amendment. Now, that's it. That it's retaliation against a union for protected speech, right? So, Andrew, without needing to get into the specifics about the case itself, can you speak a little about how courts generally view government retaliation claims tied to speech association, especially for involving like federal unions?
Yeah, well, content based and viewpoint based restrictions on speech by the government, that's illegal. That's a First Amendment violation. Okay. And uh, without getting into the specifics, I think that Judge Peckman, really the judge in this case, really asked some good questions, that highlighted the very issues you're talking about, because it wasn't all labor unions at the TSA that she
Right,
stripped rights away. It
right,
was AFGE. It was the ones that had been loud opposing President Trump's policies, been in court fighting his policies, been outspoken about that this is the wrong way to run our country and this is ultimately going to be worse for everybody, not just union members, everybody, not just federal employees, everybody. And they've been outspoken about that. And now they've been targeted. And she asked the questions. It appears that only the unions that were giving opposition to President Trump's policies were the ones that were targeted. And the judge literally, and there, I know there's an article on this that where we quote the questions, but um, Judge Peckman's question that, this isn't a pattern that you see. Attorneys isn't this a pattern you see? Attorneys who take opposition stances get banned, and those who do not don't have those restrictions. Isn't this a pattern that the White House has set up, and doesn't that taint the thinking of the secretary, Christy? No.
right. So it's a blatant uh, First Amendment rights violation. I mean, there's no question about it. Sounds to me. Um, but then and we were talking about this off camera a little bit, but it all comes down to, like you said, where do our loyalties stand as federal employees? I think that an article came out not so long ago where OPM is now at what some of the questions for hiring or onboarding people. Are they going to advance his plans? And how are they going to support his plans? And this is all tied up to whether if you side up with this administration, it doesn't matter if they're on the right, if they're on the wrong, no matter what it is, it doesn't matter what happens. All they want is your loyalty. As long as you're loyal to them and you do whatever they ask you to, you won't face any opposition. Now, when you start opposing these people, when you start opposing these policies, when you start opposing these executive orders, then you become a villain, because you're not supposed to oppose any of them. And then you start getting into things like this, where they start retaliating against you, which is in the case of AFG. Now, Justice Department's Brian Kipnis is trying to get the case thrown out. Judge Marsha Peachman doesn't have he says that Judge Marsha Peachman doesn't have jurisdiction, and that this should go through the FLRA instead. Now, I know you mentioned earlier, and you're right on the dot. TSA was created outside of Title V, and they don't necessarily have any authority, the FLRA, to see this case at all. So far, Judge Peachman has signaled that she will keep hearing the case, at least for now. Could you help break down what jurisdictional arguments like this usually hinge on? Could this possibly be a tactic to just slow down the process?
Right. I'm going to answer that question by following up. I'm going to tie it together, but by following up on what you said earlier. This administration, to be qualified for a position, a high ranking DOJ position, a high ranking position in administration, to be anything appointed to a judge, anything in this administration, the number one qualification is undying loyalty. Will you, and there was even a memo sent out to DOJ attorneys, is my understanding, that it was like, will you advance the president's arguments? You
Right.
need to advance the president's arguments no matter what they are, or you're in the wrong place. Right.
I think it
So,
says executive orders. If how which they're asking which executive orders your favorite and how are you going to support it? I mean,
and now what do we have here? This poor DOJ attorney is forced to make the most ridiculous argument that is, hey, this should be in the FLRA. You don't have jurisdiction. When actually the rulings from the FLRA are, hey, we don't have jurisdiction.
right.
This should be in district court. So it's a catch-22 for somebody, right? Like it's a Sophie's choice is what the government's trying to make it, but really they're wrong. Like they're in the right place. They don't have FLRA authority. They're not allowed to go to the FLRA. There's case law on that, and yet the government's arguing they should go there. And I would bet my mortgage on it that when they go to FLRA, if they went there, the government would say, "You're not in the right spot. You don't have the
Right.
FLRA."
So it's a mute. It's a mute argument. They're just throwing stones and just hoping it hits somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And one exchange that really stood out to me when was Judge Kipnis argued that unions don't serve any. Well, not Judge Kipnis. I'm sorry, but when Kipnis argued that unions don't serve any legal benefit, any real benefit, Judge Peachman wasn't really having it. She really pushed back on it by saying that previous TSA leadership had renewed union contracts for years because they believe those contracts led to better morale, more effective workers, and even a stronger workforce overall. Before we continue, let's pause for a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Accessing legal representation shouldn't be hard, and neither should be accessing your own businesses, your platform, your voice. That is why I created Riversites, a powerful website creation and design service built for big and small businesses alike. Whether you're a union, a nonprofit, or a small business owner, we've got the tools to bring your mission online beautifully and affordably. Right now, we're offering 10% off for unions and legal services when you sign up for a multi-year plan. Just head over to riversitehub.com/fight-for-rights to schedule your free consultation today. That's again, riversitehub.com/fight-for-rights. Let's build something powerful together. So Judge Peachman pointed out that past TSA leadership renewed union contracts because they believed that helped morale and performance. Now, how significant is it that kind of administrative history when comparing it to the current justification for stripping bargaining rights? Do you think this is like significant at all? Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. I think you're muted.
I apologize. I think again, it's just another hypocrisy we're trying to promote. That clearly it was beneficial to have these unions, and clearly they increased morale. And now just all of a sudden making the opposite argument when for years that's been the purpose of the unions, which labor unions do increase company morale, in private sector and in public sector.
Right.
And essentially what it is she doesn't like that AFGE is fighting back. And AFGE is not Secretary Noem's dog in South Dakota. Okay. They're not just going to take what she's going to give. Like AFGE is fighting back and she's trying to put them out like she did her dog in South Dakota. So you might want to cut that part, but
well, you know, I just here's the bottom line. I mean, Honestly, it's such a mute argument. I think that people that make this kind of argument, they don't know what goes on in the workforce. They don't know what goes on, in their agencies. They don't, or frankly, they just don't care. They don't care what employees go through. They don't care, and they don't realize how many corrupt management officials we have on these places where they try to abuse of our employees. They don't care about their safety, and I'm not talking about all of them, but there's a reason why unions are here. It's because there is a number of people in management positions that just don't care about employee safety. They don't have any concern about their lives. They don't concern about how any decisions they make affect their employees. All they care about is the bottom line.
Well, if you look at the history of labor unions, whether in federal government recently and then going further back in the private sector, the reason that things are better to where I know people argue, oh, we don't need these unions all the time, that labor unions have been on the front lines of workers' rights. These laws that we have as minimal and inefficient, and I think we need more to protect workers, they're there because of labor unions. And so, yeah, the first step is the federal government labor unions. The next might be the private sector. And
Right.
if you think that doesn't affect non-bargaining unit employees, if you're a private sector non-union member and you think the dismantling of labor unions and the labor movement won't affect you, well,
Oh,
I
it
mean,
will.
I have beachfront property to sell you in Kentucky, okay? Right on the ocean in Kentucky. So it does. It's all tied in, and I'm a big fan of NPR. I listen to NPR, and I was listening that they had a show on the history of the labor movement
Right.
in LA, and just like seeing the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to get minimal workers' rights. Literally, before the labor movement, workers were just treated as disposable
Right.
pieces of property, not they weren't treated as workers. They didn't have rights, and horrible working conditions, and it was horrible, right? So is that what is going to make America great again? Is that what we're going back to?
Right. People don't realize, a lot of people don't realize the importance of unions. Like, I come from the private sector where, in a place where unions didn't really exist. And I can tell you firsthand that there's a reason why I joined a union. The first thing I did whenever I came into the federal government, and that I found out that we had a union, first thing I did was sign up to the union, because I know firsthand what happens when you don't have anybody that can voice your concerns, that can raise grievances and these issues on behalf of you, and not having representation. And a lot of people in the private sector, sadly, a lot of people are used to this as well, and they don't know that they are in a world where things don't have to be the way they are. Things, there is a way to fight for justice for employees. And what this is, and this is why this is so important, and why I think this is so. And again, you hit it right on the dot, Andrew. This could potentially trickle down to the private sector. I mean, what stops them if they start with the federal government? What stops them from going back to the private sector? Because ultimately, their goal is for businesses, for management, for the bottom line, for the bottom dollar, not for the people. And this is what's going to happen. Who knows what promises have been made to private entities, telling them, don't worry, we're going to get rid of your unions as well, so that you can advance and make whatever you want to do.
And I want to correct one thing you said. It's not this might potentially trickle to this private sector. It absolutely
And well,
100% will and is currently trickling to the private sector. Even just who appoints the board, who appoints the chief counsel for the National Labor Relations
that's
Board for
right.
private sector unions. It's already happening. There's been a total dismantling of labor rights, not just at the federal level, which they can even do to a greater extent And I know but at the private sector level, and I know you talked about this, I think, in previous episodes. But what we're seeing with TSA and Kristi Noem, and this is just an extension of what we saw with President Trump's order dismantling, unilaterally canceling bargaining rights for multiple different agencies.
Right. Right. It's just the bottom line is they don't want unions, but behind that, the whole reason is we don't want employees to have a voice. We don't want employees to have a right. We want them to do whatever we need them to do. We want them to be available to us 24/7. We don't want them to have personal, private lives. We want their life to be our business. And I think this government is aligned with that viewpoint of the private sector, and you can see it on our government, the way that they're treating us, the way that they're trying to get rid of our rights. And you're absolutely right. I take back what I said. It will absolutely happen. It will absolutely happen in the private sector, and that's why it's so important that we fight and that we win to make sure that not only the federal government but the private sector and America as a whole, we can get past this and make sure that employee rights are protected. Now, one thing I want to go back to, Judge Peachman isn't expected to issue a final ruling until possibly next week, Andrew, but we're already seeing signs that if she rules against the administration, they're going to appeal. This administration is pushing forward the FLRA. So let's say that Judge Pittman rules against the government. It's likely that this is going to end up in the federal court. How could we actually see this routed back towards? I guess would we see them trying to push this back to FLRA, even if it's a mute argument, as they're suggesting?
I mean, that's something that I can't answer. From a legal perspective, no, it should not be pushed back to FLRB. Jurisdiction is appropriate in my opinion. And I don't think that the judge in this case is buying that argument either. What happens when it gets appealed? That depends. That depends on the panel of the Court of Appeals that's chosen to see it. We saw with the preliminary injunction that was reversed
Right.
for all the other unions back around the middle of May. That was a panel of a H.W. Bush appointee, a Trump appointee, and I want to say it was a Biden appointee, but one other appointee from a Democrat president, and the panel was split 2-1. It was
Right.
2-1. We're gonna reverse it. Obviously, like their pretext was, oh well, there's no harm because the administration and OPM issued guidance, and we're gonna be honoring these bargaining unit rights and agreements and contracts pending the litigation. So there's no harm, and you can't do this preliminary injunction since they're saying they're going to abide by it. Well, you and I know on the ground level is that's not true. They're
Right.
already refusing to engage in negotiating, and they're refusing to accept grievances and across different agencies. Maybe not at your local, maybe not at your agency, listener, but it's already happening where they're starting just to ignore it. So that A wasn't a truthful statement by the DOJ in that argument, and B, they're on the ground floor. That's not happening. The harm's already occurring. It's real. So that's what we're seeing. A lot of times it depends on your panel, and what the Trump administration was really good at in the first term, and what the Republicans were really good at during the second term of President Obama's administration is holding off President Obama's judicial nominees and shoving through President Trump's judicial nominees. And as we talked about earlier, what's the number one qualification? It's blind loyalty. Now, I
Right.
say that, and I'm going to caveat it because there are Trump appointees to judicial positions that are amazing judges and that aren't influenced by politics and that are doing a really good job. I've had cases with Trump appointed judges who are amazing. So I don't want that taken out of context. There are really good judges, even appointed by
Right.
Trump, who are going to uphold the rule of law.
Right.
Um, but that might not be the case for every single one. Oftentimes, what I've seen, and now I'm taking it out of the judicial branch because I'm not trying to insult the judicial branch at all while I'm on here, who has really good judges, like I said, appointed from both parties. But off that judicial branch, just in general, we've seen some of the most unqualified people appointed to positions based on nothing more than they got on Fox News and said nice things. So, I mean, that's the reality we're living in, and that's okay. And look, I say this to clients all the time. I have clients who are federal employees who are huge Trump supporters. And I say that's fine. I totally understand. But regardless of that, this is affecting you. You
Right.
know, this is affecting you in multiple ways, and this is how, and what's happening to you right now with this riff is a result of that. So regardless of what your politics are, like, this ultimately affects you as a person. And I'm not big on politics. I don't like politics.
Right.
I'm big on people.
Right.
And and I don't think that people at the lowest level, like people, the workers, the backbone of our nation, are being treated appropriately or correctly, whether they know it or not.
Right. I'm on the same boat as you. I'm not. I think that in politics, people will say what they want to say, and what they think people want to listen to, so they can get in power. So for me, politics it's not really something that influences me. What influences me is what you're going to do for me as a person, as a constituent, as as an American citizen, how your decisions are going to impact my life. So I think that's what people really need to look at is how the people that are in office and how the people that are governing will affect your personal lives, and that they do it in a way that it's sufficient and that it doesn't negatively impact you. So I think there's we can get into a whole conversation about that, but regardless of all of that, I think we need to be more vigilant of what's going on and put politics aside, and just go and take the blinds of politics off just for a minute. Look at what's going on, see how it's affecting you, and then you make your decisions based on that. And I think that would make for better decisions when it comes to what we want to do and what we want our government to look like.
That's such a good point. It's sort of like if you had people running for office and they didn't have that label, and then you actually just had to listen to what the person said and what they're actually going to do for you.
Right.
Would that change things? Like, I don't know, maybe. Well, I know a lot of things that are currently happening don't appear to be things that were promised. But I mean, for me, in my family, like, the price has gone up on a lot of things, not
Right.
down. But that's a separate issue. Um, I'm paying. I have a toddler at home, and I'm paying, $50 more for a box of diapers or whatever, or 30, $40 more for a box of diapers. And that's the reality. Like, how is this affecting you as a person? I wish people would think more about that. And us as people, like, the majority of us as Americans, we're workers, right? Like, we're working jobs. We don't just have this generational money and don't have to work. And that's, like, how are you treated as a worker? How would you want to be treated? How would you want your kids treated? That's such a good point, though, that you make, Danny. I wish we could do that. Just how are we acting as people, not with the politics aside?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, as always, this isn't just about one agency. It's about precedent. If a sitting administration can strip away bargaining rights with the stroke of a pen and face no resistance, it sends a message to federal employees: your rights are conditional. And as we discussed before, not just federal employees, but actually to the private sector, to the American people, everybody. It sends a clear message that your rights are conditional, which we do not want. We do not want to bargain over, what our rights are. We want to make sure that we keep our rights intact and that we can enforce them. And if we don't fight back legally, vocally, and strategically, those rights will keep slipping away. Big thanks to Andrew Weeks for being here with me today. For any federal employees out there who might need legal support, Andrew, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
It's definitely, you can get all the contact information you need from our website, legaljusticeatwork.com. We have our emails on there, our phone numbers. My partner Whitney Raley and I's information is both on there. You can also, we have a contact us form, and you can actually schedule on Calendly. You can schedule a meeting with us. So virtually at 3 a.m. when you're up thinking about how your rights are being effective and what you can do, you can hop on our website and schedule a meeting with us at 3 a.m. in the morning. So that's the best way. legaljusticeatwork.com. Thank you.
All right, awesome. And truly, for anybody that needs legal help, make sure you get it from the best. So now for our viewers, if you found this important, don't just watch our videos. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you stay informed of your rights. Tell a coworker, tell your union, tell everybody that this matters. Stay informed, stay loud, and remember, we are not giving up. We'll see y'all in our next episode of Rights Watch.
Beep.